Everybody thought it cannot be done in India, and I am a little bit of a foolhardy guy. When somebody says it's not possible,
Like,
then
let's
I will
do
say I
it.
must do it. It's also the amount of talent in India for this kind of work is phenomenally large. You have to make use of them.
Right.
Initially, I thought will I be able to mold them? Then soon I realized you can get extraordinary output from ordinary people. There are 51 laboratories and there are 51 weeks. So I used to visit every laboratory once a year at least.
And the rest, in many ways,
Rest
is
is
history.
history.
Right.
As they say.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Raahi Impact Journeys. I am extremely delighted and honored to bring to you today a conversation with Dr. V.K. Aatre, the former scientific advisor to the Raksha Mantri, and that is just one among 200 distinctions that he has, including that he is a Padma Vibhushan and a Padma Bhushan. So, Dr. Aatre, if we could begin with just a recap of your journey, because what I know is that you were born in Karnataka. After your master's at IISc Bangalore, you then went on to do your PhD in Canada.
That's right.
And then spent 13 years as a professor there in the Technical University of Nova Scotia
That's
in
right.
Halifax. Before you came back and joined the Defense R&D organization at Cochin in the Naval Physical and Oceanographic Laboratory. And then in the 20 years post-retirement, I know that you have still continued to be extremely involved in a range of activities. So I don't know where to begin, so I think the best way would be to begin at the beginning.
Well, I graduated from University College of Engineering in Bangalore. To be honest, I didn't know anything about engineering. My father says do engineering, so I did engineering. And my father was an electrical engineer, so I had stayed in a lot of electrical engineering projects, cities. So I took up electrical. But I hardly had any interest in science and technology. I think I was more of a literature. In fact, at one stage I wanted to join literature honors and things like this. But then wisdom of elders said, you will not get a job anywhere.
Right.
The best thing to do engineering or medicine. I didn't want to do medicine, so I joined engineering. I had done reasonably well, so I got an opportunity to go to Indian Institute of Science. That is the one which changed my perception of science and technology. Research institution and lot of interdisciplinary students and students of science, technology, and all kinds of technology. So when we used to meet in coffee shops, other things, we used to talk about a lot of things about what technology could do, what it does, what is the impact of technology on society, and how science and technology intermingle to support the society. So that technology is not a bad thing to do. So that 2 years I spent in India changed my whole view. Even after that, after I did my master's, I was wondering whether to stay in India or go abroad. But at that stage, it was almost kind of mandatory. Anybody who graduated with the postgraduate degree immediately went abroad.
Right.
So I also went abroad. It so happened I went to a university called Waterloo in Canada because that professor had come here and I had met him. So he offered me to go there, and financial support was a very important thing at that stage. So I went to Waterloo and did my PhD in a highly mathematic oriented, nothing to do with electronics, underwater, such thing. But then somebody, again, same, I met some people and they offered me a job in the University of Nova Scotia.
Right.
I went there, and that particular place was a heavy naval research center.
Okay.
The underwater research center for Canada in the Atlantic Ocean was at Halifax.
Okay. Okay.
So I started doing small projects for them, intermingled with them. So my interest towards underwater technology became popular. So I learned oceanography, and so I used to teach courses on oceanography, sonars, and these things at university, and build some small gadgets, small things like that, some electronic modules. Because I knew enough electronics thing. So I slowly became a. I won't at that stage call myself an underwater electronics or sonar system man, but my prominent research work was in the underwater related issues.
Right.
But my teaching include everything: electronics, mechanical engineering, control systems, and others. But at the postgraduate level, I used to teach mostly signal processing and signal processing towards sonar systems
Right.
and other electronic systems.
And your PhD was also, I think.
No, my PhD was in what's called system sciences, very general mathematical system science and some other things. Because I didn't want to do anything the laboratory. I was in a way away from laboratories. So, but I had used to tutor a lot of electronic students, so I had enough experience of electronic hardware.
Right.
In 1977, I was a visiting professor in Indian Institute of Science.
Right.
So for the first time, I gave a course on signal processing as applicable to radars and sonars. So it was a workshop type course, and a lot of people who attended that course, when I talked to them, they said they come from defense research and this and so on, from LRDE, and there were several people from NPOL. And I met Palraj at that stage. So Palraj said they are doing with this. So Palraj gave a guest lecture and so on. So we got introduced to that. So then I was in Dr. Srinivasan then, who had attended one of the courses, said, why don't you come and give 1 week
training
course
to
my students who are working on sonars. So I went in, and when I was in Bangalore, in India, it was a sabbatical. I went there for a week. Came back, I was ready to go, but Srinivasan came, why don't you come and join us? At that stage, Palraj had started building the APSO.
Right.
And I was told that was the first major systems project for DRDO.
Right.
So I debated why I was a senior professor. In a few years' time, I would probably become the dean and everything else. I said, no, sir, I will. But he kept on. And there was another professor called Ramakrishna in Indian Institute of Science, who was working for NPOL on some projects, and he also was pestering me.
But
I went away. But somehow he kept on writing to me every other week, and so did Dr. Srinivasan once in 2-3 months. You should come. Why don't you come? At least spend few years here, and so on. So in 1980, on January 1st, actually, I had just come back from a New Year party. So I won't say I was very sober either. I had a call from Ramakrishna saying one Dr. Raja Ramanna will call me. Of course, I knew Raja Ramanna who he was. And say yes. I said,
at that time, what was he? He was already.
Who?
Dr. Raja Ramanna?
Raja Ramanna was the SATRM at that stage.
Okay.
So he said, he will call you, say yes. I said, yes for what? I asked Ramakrishna. No, don't argue, you just say yes. That's all. Raja Ramanna called me and said, Dr. Aatre, I would like you to come and spend a couple of years in NPOL. And my director person will come and discuss with you on other details. And that's all the short story. Raja Ramanna was at that stage by the time such a powerful reason, and I hummed and hawed a little. He said, thank you very much for agreeing it. So I asked my wife, shall we go to India for a couple of years? We decided to go. So I decided to come and try for 2 years. I was well established, so if I wanted to go back, I had no problem.
Right.
So I said I will come, and debated whether to come on leave or not. Then I thought if I come on leave, I will be psychologically inclined to think that I would go back. So I said no, but if I want to come back, will you take me back? The answer was yes, I had no problem. So I came and went to in July in the pouring rain in Cochin and stayed in Bharat Tourist Home for a month.
Right.
That's how my journey began.
Lovely. So at that point, you had spent 18 years in Canada, including your PhD and your work, and then you came back to India. How was the country different? Because I think you left in the 60s and came back in 1980.
I was, a lot of people were from Canadian friends,
Uh-huh.
Indian Canadian friends. I thought I was doing a foolish thing.
Right.
As a senior professor, and the opportunities were there. I was still 40 years old, 20 more years service. So I said, why am I doing such a foolish thing? I said, I will go and try. I always thought I could do something in India and go back. Little bit of idealism, I should say.
Right.
I don't know whether it was realism, probably the idealism. So I said, I will come and see. And also, my parents were getting old.
Right.
And my parents-in-law were also getting old. I thought we would spend 2 years with children and see if it works. I didn't want my children to be totally devoid of India, the exposure to Indian culture.
Right.
So this was an opportunity. So I said, okay, let me try. In the back of my mind, I always thought 2-3 years. And,
Right.
enough to exposure to get a feeling. The family will also feel happy that we spent some time there. Grandparents would have had
Some time with
children, and children also would have been exposed to their grandparents and cousins and uncles and aunts and other
Right.
things. So I came with a kind of an ambivalent feeling.
Right.
That is why I didn't evaluate very much. If I had evaluated, I wouldn't have come.
Right.
So came and joined. Somehow everything clicked. When I went there, clearly APSO was the major project. And when Srinivasan asked me, I said, I don't mind working under Balraj. I have no problem. Coming from a university, the seniority and other things has no meaning.
Right.
He's building a very interesting project. I have something to offer to him. So if you want, I will work with it. No, he's working on it. You work on the non-ship-based, air-based rods and other things.
Right.
And so for I said, okay. So when stayed for 2 years and got involved in many of the projects, and it was satisfactory. And Cochin was a good place to bring up kids. There was no difference of opinion, except you getting into rain. It was a fairly honest
Right.
place and others. And we stayed in Girinagar. So other than commuting, to naval base, there was no other. So we stayed. 2 years later, I thought it was time to say
Time is up.
bye-bye
Right.
and go back. So, and my university from Halifax called me and said, look, Dean of Engineering is retiring. We want you to come over and take over the
The
PhD.
timing is right.
Yeah.
Right.
Timing was right. So when I was debating, by the time one Dr. Arunachalam had taken over as SATR, some aspect I was discussing with him and so on, and he told me, no, Dr. Srinivasan is about to retire. I would like you to take over the lab. I said, I'm going back. Oh, no, come on. I'm told that you are doing pretty good and the people like you working there, and I would like you to take it and give it a thought for a while. And I said, it's highly bureaucratic and very compartmentalized work, and I don't know whether I have sufficient freedom to do what I want. And he said, I will give you all the freedom you want. So he convinced me, and 2 years later, I decided to stay back.
Right.
That's how it's different.
And the rest in many ways
Rest
is
is
history.
history,
Right.
as they say.
So so then you spent about 6 years totally in
11
years in
Cochin.
in NPOL, and then moved on to become chief controller R&D, and then from there became scientific advisor to Raksha Mantri. And so I know, so for what I know is all the projects that you have led and been involved in include APSO, which was the first sonar that was inducted into the Navy.
APSO was nearly completed by the time
you had
here.
joined.
Humward
Right.
was there. then the submarine sonars, airborne sonars,
Right.
towed array sonars.
Right.
These were all projects started by me.
Right. And so one of those questions that I have is, how do you incentivize people to work towards something that they are not going to see for years? Because I mean, we live today in a place where millions of dollars are being put into getting groceries delivered in 15 minutes, and here we are talking about R&D, which takes multiple years, and many times you have moved on from the post by the time it reaches its conclusion. So how were and how are people motivated and to continue that?
Look, when I went to Cochin, on the day I went to Cochin, Srinivasan was in Australia.
Okay.
So they didn't know where to even locate me and
Accommodate,
put me.
right.
So in the old building in the basement, there used to be a lot of people, secretaries were sitting. Somebody gave me a seat there, and I sat there. And when I, as a scientist, at that stage used to be called a principal scientific officer, scientist D. When I went and sat there along with these so-called junior officers, everybody was surprised that I didn't ask for a room.
Right.
I had decided you shouldn't demand anything.
Right.
If you are good enough, they will provide you. So somehow people looked at me slightly differently. I could hear the grapevine, oh, he has come from America, all Americans have a chip on shoulder.
Right.
I had no such problem. So I said, especially having come from a university, I could interact with younger people very easily.
Right.
Year by year, you get younger and younger generation.
Right.
So I started building kind of friendships with them. So when I was selected as the director, the first talk I gave, I still remember, just after taking over from Srinivasan, there are going to be changes here. Okay?
Right.
Not all changes will be liked by you. Some of them has to be by experimentation. But you have freedom to come and talk to me anytime. And if I am doing something foolish, you can tell me that you are doing foolish. I have no problem.
Right.
I have no such ego problem.
Right.
So I am going to change the structure. I am going to work differently. And also I told them very clearly, I don't believe in seniority.
Right.
Seniority comes because of your knowledge. If you are very good, you are going to become a senior technologist. But a person who heads the project has to be a younger one who can run around, get things done, and so on. And all my technology directors were senior people who had experience. But all my project directors were young people. And I said seniors are going to report to them as far as the project is concerned.
This was a matrix structure that you
Matrix
built
structure.
out. Okay.
So everybody was wondering, how can seniors report? So I said, I am a topmost senior most. I will report to him. I have no problem. So as a director, I used to go in his meetings and answer his questions.
Leading by example.
Yeah. So I became quite friendly with them.
Right.
I wanted to, other than talking about sonar and signal processing, I used to talk to them about general things and sociological things, so I could identify and interact with them very easily.
Right.
So I used to tell them, you shouldn't consider this as a job from 9 to 4. It won't work. Especially in India, where there is very little industrial setup and very little previous knowledge. If you want to succeed, you have to work as much as it is. So I used to go home at 6 o'clock, come back at 7:30, we'll work. So there are occasions when we work till 2 o'clock at night.
Right.
So there was nothing like 40 hours a day, which was the norm of thing. So somehow or the other, everybody jived well. Nobody said no. Because I having asked them to work till 2 o'clock, I was not going home watching TV. I was there till 2 o'clock.
Right.
And if they were working on the wharf, and I had asked them to do something on the wharf, and I said, I will come there at 1:30 at night and see what I do. I sat with them.
Right.
So my whole process of, I never a management student, never studied anything in management.
Right.
And I still believe a lot of management is personal relationships and how you build that. So I thought I would show by example whatever I do. All of them had access to me to come into my room anytime. But I used to tell them, after I've heard all of you, I am the decision maker.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Unless you prove me wrong, you have to follow mine. But I will listen to all your ideas, take all your ideas.
Right.
And it's my job to put it together. I'm never going to claim I'm 100% right. But I have to take a decision, so I have taken a decision, this is what you are going to do. And also, another thing which I wanted to experiment was, in India generally, because of seniority, you say you become this, you become that, and administrator, and the best technologists need not necessarily become best administrators,
Right.
and vice versa.
Right.
So I had people who were very good in logistics. I said, look at that. So pigeonholing for the right jobs is something which a leader has to do. I had good luck, I achieved it. So succeeded.
And you had the space to do such massive changes at that time, because I'm guessing this was at a lab level. You had the enough autonomy at a lab level to.
Dr. Arunachal left me free because we are producing results.
Right.
You see, APSA was a great success. If APSA was not a success, and that is where Palra's contribution to NPOL is phenomenal. If that was not a success, it was a major systems program. Touch wood, after that, whatever we tried was succeeded.
Right.
So when you success, nobody is going to object to you.
Right. There is
So
credibility.
it was internal. I said I was going to provide things which, but don't ask me how we are going to do it. It is my job. As the director, how to be organized, what to do, get the best out of everybody.
Right.
And surprisingly, the NPOL had what at that stage hardly 2 or 3 people who were the IIT types.
Right.
They were all from engineering colleges where I had not even heard of them.
Right.
Kottayam, this, that, and all places. And initially I thought, will I be able to mold them? Then soon I realized you can get extraordinary output from ordinary people, provided you clearly identify their role, what you expect from them. So I think NPOL became the best technical laboratory in DRDO. Thanks. And the idea was the whole group, the 200 officers and others, even the unions somehow I could keep under control. It's a very highly union-oriented case. I used to tell them, look, there are certain government rules which I cannot break. I operate within the government rules. All I can say is I will not show any favoritism. I will not show any bias. I will talk to anybody.
Right. Nice.
Few things which I did, if I may say, in NPOL was building a new campus.
When it moved from the naval base to
So I built the campus. So from Pallurthi, I used to go at 7 o'clock to Tirkakara.
You're basically running a triangle, from home to naval base to.
Yeah. First, I used to go to Tirkakara at 7 o'clock, and I told the construction people, you to be there at 7, I will come. So 7, half an hour, 45 minutes, look around, come back to NPOL. The evening, 6:30, again go back to Tirkakara.
Okay.
And then go.
And during all of this, how was Kanti Aatre ma'am?
Don't ask me that. You should ask her. First few years, my eldest daughter had enough time.
Okay.
But my second daughter had not time. My son didn't have any time from me.
Right.
By that time, I had become too busy.
Right.
Sure, she looked after. And how she managed, you should ask her.
Sure. Part 2.
So I used to be out most of the weekends. And I did a lot of errands for Arunachalam. We ran a course in Pune, which I used to run from there. I built a ship called Sagaradhwani.
Sagaradhwani was built by you?
Yeah.
Oh, phenomenal. Okay.
And I was wondering how a naval laboratory operates without a ship.
Right.
So I
And so
argue
I think
with
Sagrathwani is being used by NPOL to run its sonar tests.
So gathering, so some testing and all.
Right.
So I convinced Arunachalam to sanction a project. So at that stage, a huge project, 380 crores in 83, 84. And, and nobody had built an instrumented ship in India.
Okay.
So they said you must import. I said no. Why are we having an R&D laboratory if you are going to import?
Right.
So I'll get it built. So decided to look. I brought a naval captain by name Mahapatra and said, you are in charge of the shipbuilding.
Okay.
And R.R. Rao and others was select the equipment, and I'm going to manage. So I used to go every month once to Calcutta, where the ship was being built in Garden Ridge workshop. We hired a foreigner to help us in integrating, so built. After 30 years, the ship is still working beautifully.
Amazing.
And everybody thought it cannot be done in India. And I am a little bit of a foolhardy guy. When somebody says it's not possible, then I will say I must do it.
Okay.
Kind of a thing. But I won't say indiscreet. But I thought, what is this? You have built ships. You are saying we are building sonar, we are building that. Only thing is integration of the equipment. We will hire a foreign guy to help us who is retired from building such ships. Bring him, yes, get a little more expensive.
Right.
And convince that they have to give. Take a sessions, and all of you must be involved.
Work together. Right.
So we integrated the ship for Sagrathwani, and I convinced Navy to run it for us.
Right.
Even that was something new. How can an R&D ship be run by Navy?
Right.
So somehow I got along very well with chiefs of staff.
Okay.
And also the local CNC. They were all good friends. I could walk into their office and talk to them freely.
And paint a picture of what DRDO was like at that time, because was it all, so today, I mean, as I grew up, I know of DRDO and what all it has, but I feel like from everything I have read, it wasn't that it was destined to succeed. It wasn't that it was obvious from the beginning that DRDO as an institution would actually succeed and have so much of R&D that comes out of it. So at the point that you joined NPOL and then moved on, where was it in that journey?
You see, actually, I knew enough number of people in LRDE.
Okay.
Okay. Who used to be in electronics, and Indian Institute of Science, and many of them were Indian Institute of Science students.
Right.
And they had attended the course which I had given, so I had become familiar with them. I knew the people were good. To succeed in a place like DRDO, you don't need Einsteins.
Right.
The things are already well known. You are not inventing or doing research and writing papers.
Right.
You are adapting available technology to your local environment.
Right.
Not that APSO kind of sonars were not available in India. Balraj Samot said, okay, this is a warm water thing, so we have to modify it to sonar to a warm water sonar.
Okay.
Rather, of course. So that kind of adaptation had to be done. So for that, it doesn't require geniuses.
It requires
a lot of thoughts, some innovation, lot of willing workers.
Right.
To put things together.
Right.
So in DRDO, maybe there are about, out of the 17,000 or 18,000 scientists, maybe 10% are hotshots.
Right.
The rest of 70-80% has to be made willing workers. I used to visit many laboratories. When I go to DRDL, which was headed by Kalam, there also found Kalam was also not a brilliant designer, but a brilliant manager.
Right.
The right kind of people in right slots, support them, help them, don't put anybody down.
Right.
And make sure that everybody produce the best they can.
They can.
Their best, how good is their best has no concern.
Right.
No, you cannot ask a primary school student to solve a third order differential equation.
Right.
So a primary school student has to read something, do multiplication. So if he does that well, then he has done his job.
Right.
So slot them for that. So DRDO were a lot of willing workers. And at that stage, India was under embargo. Lot of components and things were delayed because the NPOL, we never used to get so even connectors, cables were all not allowed to import. So you have to do improvise, develop them again, not high technology,
but critical to
critical
have.
technology. So there you had a lot of people like that. I'm sure safety with space and other people.
Right.
So putting team building and making the team operate as optimally as possible is the job of the leadership. And in DRDO, wherever you have succeeded, whether NPOL or DRDL or Arjun Tank or Pinaka,
Right.
all the leaders have done that. So there are not such people. Maybe a dozen, 25, 50, as I said, 10% perhaps.
Right.
And so DRDO succeeded.
Right.
And slowly the base got built up. And if I look back, if the scenario of industrial scenario of today was available to me in 20, what I took for 10 years to build, I would have probably done it in 5 or 6 years.
Right. And I guess you would have also had to do a lot of ecosystem building to enable all of this to happen. Yeah. And so when you got called to become Chief Controller R&D from being Director NPOL, were you willing to leave?
No. Arunachalam was very clear. You have done enough for NPOL. There are enough people, Ramurthy, Chandar are all well trained. They will take over. No problem. But the electronic laboratories in DRDO require different kind of leadership. I want you to come to Delhi and take over all the electronic laboratories. First I resisted. Then he said, Aatre, come on, how long are you going to stay as director? You have done everything. What else will you do?
Right.
And already your sonars are inducted, and the Russians think that you have built a very good sonar already for nuclear submarine and other things. The Panchendriya and all those things, Mehir and all things. So why don't you go to Delhi? So finally I went.
So by that time, Panchendriya and Mehir
were already in the final stage of integration.
Okay, super.
And people like P.C. George were already looking at, and there are a number of such people. Narayan Das had come and joined by the time. He looked at all the materials. People who were especially trained in software engineering in Carnegie Mellon, and I brought them back. So they were all.
The team was prepared, and
so these were prepared. I knew that it would work even without me.
Right.
So I decided to go.
Okay. And in your tenure as CC R&D, I think one big piece was the electronic warfare integrated program, Samyukta, for the Army and the Navy. So, since you mentioned a little earlier, I just wanted to double down a little bit. So, if I look at the average layperson today, the fascination that they have or the knowledge that they have when they think of India's defense goes directly to space and ISRO, especially with all the media that is around it.
That's not true, not at that stage. At that stage in the 80s till 90s, early 90s when IT became a fashion.
Right.
DRDO, the students, not IITs, but other colleges students, top students used to come to DRDO.
Okay.
For the simple reason, the amount of equipments available and infrastructure available was superb.
Right.
You didn't have to cringe for a computer here, the chips here, and there are plenty.
Actually play with it and build
and you are looking at the cutting edge of technology.
Right.
So many of the people, when I used to call them, yes sir, we want to work for 2 or 3 years, get the experience and jump the ship.
Right.
Okay, a lot of youngsters, I said, okay, if he works for 3 or 4 years, why do you prevent him?
Right.
So the lot of good youngsters, though not IIT tech. I don't believe that the IITs are the only ones who are
correct. In fact, I think that was also a period where everyone was leaving the country.
So the difference between your 2000th rank and 2001st rank is probably in third decimal place point.
Right.
So a lot of them were willing to come and work because of the infrastructure.
Right.
And the prestige of working in a DRDO project. The salary was as good.
Right.
And there were other facilities. There were campuses and things like
Beautiful
that.
Campuses.
And and you can go abroad on something, the thing, and so on. All those interesting.
Right.
So people who used to work did well, so succeeded. But when I went to Delhi as CC R&D, looking at electronics and looked at electronics laboratories, Bangalore laboratories, LRD, I knew there is a laboratory called DLRL, Defense Electronic Research Laboratory, which supposedly electronic warfare laboratory.
Okay.
And as I said, I could talk to youngsters very easily, so all the things. When I went there, honestly, I found the knowledge base in that laboratory was unbelievable.
Okay.
NPOL and others looked like midgets. They were
Right.
superb people. But they were all doing tiny, mini projects, 1 crore here, 2 crore here, whereas my ship was 300 odd crores, the Panchendaria was 250 crores, and the sonar system was 70. I said, what the hell are you doing in this one part? 1 crore, 2 crore, 3 crore. You must have a big project if you want to make a. You must build an APSO.
Right.
For DLRL.
Right.
And then I said, so I collected 3 or 4 top so-called electronic warfare designers, brought them to Delhi into my room. I said, teach me electronic warfare. What is it? So for about 10, 15 days, every evening, we used to tell me, this is what it is, this is what it is, this is electronic. So I arranged a group to design a massive system for Army and system for Navy, for submarine, ship, aircraft and other things. So all the system design at the highest level was done sitting in my room in Delhi.
Nice.
Then I went to the government, somehow convinced them that you must manage the project. But one thing I did know, everybody talks about private companies are not involved. I went to the government. When I went to the project sanction, the production agency was already identified. A private company was also involved. Part of the R&D money comes from DRDO, and as soon as the research is over, the other money comes from Army. So the first time in DRDO, we got a project sanction, which both Army and Navy were funding the money. How I confused the service chiefs, I don't know. They somehow believed me. So these were the massive, these are all 3,000, 2,000 crore projects.
Wow.
Where the DRDO money was used to be about 10%, 10 to 15%. Rest of it used to come from Army.
Okay, that's a big achievement.
No, what I had said was, during R&D, I will chair.
Right.
Once R&D is over, you chair and direct the program.
Right.
And the industry partners were already there. So slowly built, and Samyukta and succeeded to a large extent. Very complex technology.
Yeah. And that sounds like a lot of stakeholders. That how did you manage to bring them to the same table?
I have never known. I was sat back and think how they are. I used to tell them, look, you've got to have some faith somewhere. I am here working 15 to 16 hours a day. All I can assure you is I'll work 15 to 16 hours a day and make my all officers work 16 hours a day.
Right.
You've got to have somewhere faith.
I put my foot forward. Yeah.
And also, you see, in the NPOL had done one good thing. I don't know whether Srinivasan did or who did. All the projects had naval people coming and working in it.
Right.
Okay.
That handshake was already
handshake. So I said, give me certain officers. Your service officers are going to come and head. They know actually how it is going to be used. So at every step, there was a service officer. No, that's not the way we work. You transfer this. So there were lots of service officers working in it. And there were some of the program directors and so on. So somehow we built that kind of a rapport.
Right. I think when you are in the same room and you spend extended hours between different organizations.
In fact, in the system design group itself, I had got a Commodore and a Colonel to come and sit and you tell us what you want.
Right.
Leave the technology to us.
Right.
Tell us what you want.
Nice.
So somehow it clicked. Maybe I was lucky. I don't know.
And so as an outsider, what are those? So, like people know about the missiles that get produced, right? About the fighter jets that get produced, for example. What else happens in DRDO that you feel like the world needs to know?
So you see, Missile is a tactical system, nobody will export to you.
Right.
So there was no problem. Whereas radars, sonars, guns, everybody is ready to give.
Right.
So you had to do something different from what others are going to do. Whereas missile, nobody is going to question because nobody is going to give you, so the services will accept.
Right.
But the others to accept, you must show that something is better.
There's a value addition.
And the value addition is than the import. So Samyukta is such a massive system, huge amount of software. By the time India had become slowly becoming a powerhouse in software.
Right.
So he said, software you should not give it to foreigners. You never know what you are going to get.
Right. Because there could be a backdoor or something built
You
in.
never know, Trojans and whatnot.
Right.
So because it's software, give it to Indian boys can do. Because they are also the Indian boys who are doing the software there. So they let them do it here. So that was the advantage. Whereas missile, nobody is going to give you, you have no choice but to do it. That was the difference. So electronic laboratories so happened. As I said, many of them part-time students in Indian Institute of Science were considered as me as a professor.
Right.
So in India, a professor remains a professor for life.
Right.
So everybody used to listen to me, at least hear me.
Right.
So I had no problem. I can go and walk into LRD, RDLR, LRSPL, NSTL, nothing to talk to them. So I tend to think I'm slightly arrogant here because I knew how to deal youngsters.
Right. And that is fascinating because I think you don't ever see that as a superpower, but then I can see in your story that that is one thing that has become a recurring theme.
Even now, I go to colleges, talk to youngsters because they are the future of your country.
Right.
And the most important characteristic of a leader or a manager is not to do but get things done.
Right. Isn't it hard to do that when you know too much about the project? Like, as somebody who was already an expert in signal processing, as someone who had, authored many papers that were cutting edge, when you join this place and there are a lot of these youngsters with great ideas, but you know so much more about the topic, was that hard for you to step away?
No, not necessary. For example, you see, when I came, Chandra was reasonably good.
Right.
Chandra did his master's under me, and he was
Right.
registered under PhD for this. I then sent Ananthanarayana to Indian Institute of Science, and I got a award as the best thesis in Indian Institute of Science. I sent PC George to Delhi IIT, and did very well. So you pick the people, right people are sent to me, and because I had come from an academic institution, I knew most of the professors working in the general area.
Okay.
So I used to bring professors to India from to NPOL. A lot of IIT professors, IISc professors who used to come to LPO and work.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people working on signal processing and mechanical things. For example, when we did Todor, hydrodynamic study was done by a professor in the Indian Institute of Science who used to come there and talk to them.
Yeah.
And so the amount of talent in India for this kind of work is phenomenally large. You have to make use of them.
Right. And so then taking that forward, I have a question. When you moved from, say, Karnataka to Halifax, then to Cochin, and then to Delhi, how did it feel to now suddenly be in the heart of, I'm sure there's a lot more political pull and give and take and complications when you were finally in Delhi.
You see, what happened was I had probably lucky. Raja Ramanna was already a legend in that side.
Right.
So I joined with Raja Ramanna. Arunachalam became a legend.
Right.
Then Kalam.
Right.
So you see, you had people who had a big shield with the government.
Right.
And had something in the government. When Raja Ramanna, Arunachalam or Kalam went and told the government couldn't reject it outright. So under that shade, I also had that. So when I walked into Vajpayee's office and asked something, it was done.
Right.
I used to meet Vajpayee every month once. I'm talking about this when I was 5 years. So we built a rapport. In no country can you succeed in R&D without government support.
Right.
You must also look at and prove it to them you mean business.
I didn't get that.
You mean business.
Right. You need to show it to them that.
Yeah, assure them that this is going to be done. Yes, there are delays, there are problems. These are all part of it. No defense project in the world gets done on time.
Right.
Not only in India, anywhere else.
Right. But as long as it gets done, that's what matters.
You must finally prove it. But you cannot say inordinately, but also listen to them.
Right. What they need.
Yeah,
what they're
keep the communications channel open.
Right.
Both ways. It's a two-way communication. You cannot do that.
And so when you took over from Dr. Kalam and became the scientific advisor to Raksha Mantri, how was that shift? When the shade was finally gone?
Yeah, when I took over electronic laboratories, I forgot about naval laboratories, honestly.
Right.
So I said, my job is now electronic laboratories. So when I went to the SC I forgot electronic laboratories also. What was the job? At that stage, the major programs were Agni and LCA.
Right.
So I said, everything else, the next level will look after. So my concentration is going to be missiles and light combat aircraft. I spent most of my time there. Doing what? Now you are not doing technical things. You are not even doing technical management. You are doing coordination with the government, with the user.
Right.
And with the 200 and odd production agencies which are around. So you are going to become more of a coordinator.
Right.
By the time my name was reasonably well known, so when I asked to call for a meeting, all of them used to come.
Right.
So I used to meet them once a month regularly on a prescribed date.
Right.
All of them putting in the same room.
You had set a schedule for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably I used to work 70, 80 hours a week, except Sundays.
That was your...
Yeah. And Saturday and Sunday I used to be out of Delhi in some college. There are 51 laboratories and there are 51 weeks. So I used to visit every laboratory once a year at least.
Okay. That was your way of...
So that was my interface with the laboratory, starting from missile laboratory to agricultural laboratory.
Right.
So I used all of them. And coming from academic world, I probably had a workable knowledge of most of the systems, except tank.
Right.
Tank is something which I never used. Agricultural, biomedical, sensors, electronics, I had no problem. Tank was a separate different issue. So, but tank was being handled by a very good man. So I didn't learn about it, but that was slightly offbeat. Missile again, other than the propulsion, other things is mainly electronics.
Right.
So I had no problem.
That was in your...
at least understand.
Right.
Obviously, you are not going to know the nitty-gritty details. That is left to the program director.
Right.
Not even program director would not know the nitty-gritty. Left to the scientist.
Right. Who's actually...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my concentration became Agni and
LCA.
LCA.
And in all of this journey, what was, I think, two opposing sides. What was your favorite project or the one thing that you're most proud of? And at the other end, what was your biggest challenge in all these years?
You cannot have a
favorite
project.
Right.
If you are a director, there is nothing like a favorite project. As I said to RM, I had no favorite laboratories. All laboratories were my favorite.
Right.
What was the important projects? For example, when I was at NPOL, the important project was finally the submarine sonar because of the nuclear submarines.
Right.
And in fact, I recollect submarine when our consultant Russian asked me, how many nuclear submarine sonars you have built? I said 0. Then I said, how come you are offering? Then I said, just because I teach a course 100 times, it doesn't mean I'm 100 times knowledgeable. I'm going to build you, you can come and test.
Right.
The first sonar we built, 1. So in NPOL, my prestigious project was
the nuclear
Mihir, which went to the nuclear submarine. My challenging project was towed array. Okay. Because it's something new, because it was more than electronics, it was the mechanical aspects.
Correct.
Towing an array, such a long array, packaging the array, and so on. When I
This
was
was
in
for a ship, if I'm not wrong.
yeah, ship
Okay, so
crosses, it's about 500 meters behind the ship.
the
Draw
towed
it,
array
and
is
then roll it
drags.
on a deck of a ship. And
Right.
so designing the, getting the uh, winch design, packaging it.
And all this
It was
in
the
high seas.
job I had given to Kurvilla.
Right.
So it's your job. Don't worry about others. So concentrate on that thing. When I went, I said to RM, my prestigious project was Samyukta.
Right.
And we did what is called a weapon locating radar,
Okay.
which Kargil time services was complaining LRD had not built a weapon locating. Weapon locating is a very interesting letter. When a shell is fired from enemy territory, it tracks the shell.
It tracks where it is. Okay.
And then back projects.
To where the location
Where
of
the gun is
the person
located.
was from.
And attack the gun.
Okay.
So that's why it's called a weapon locating radar.
Right.
I said, why can't we build it? What is wrong? So we got that. So the Samyukta and weapon locating radar because when you became SCA to RM Agni and LCA.
LCA over the.
Not I rejected other projects.
Right.
But these became a center. They are the first call
Right.
basis.
And if I remember what I read correctly, you carried forward everything from your predecessor. You made sure that nothing was.
Yeah, they had done well. What is the point of saying that? No, I had started my own projects also.
Right.
Like Samyuktan was started by me, and other
Right.
one was a miniature AVAX
Right.
with cabs did it. That was the last major project I mentioned. And I said, we call ourselves a powerhouse. We are not building a cabs. Cabs build was built, and now it's flying with the Indian Air Force. So the favorite projects changed as a
With time. I think what I find beautiful about your journey is also there is a certain being mindful of the present that you do. In all of this, I see that when you are in a particular position in a particular place, you focus on what is there, what is the material conditions of your role, and you build the best you can from
yeah.
it. And how did the Padma Bhushan, Padma Vibhushan feel?
Padma, I don't. Both of them I don't know. In 2000, I think Kalam must have nominated. So in 2000, I got Padma Bhushan. And obviously there was Kalam. I don't even know who nominated me for Padma Bhushan.
Okay.
I was called from Ministry of Home Affairs and said, you have been awarded, will you accept? Government servants have no choice but to accept. You can't reject it.
Oh.
So I accepted. Padma Bhushan came in 2016. 2016.
Yeah.
Because disregarding the history is disregarding yourself, according to me. You don't have to follow it, but you should know it.
Yeah.
If you want to build a society, there are a number of pieces, jigsaw pieces you have to put together.
Together.
India shines because we are extremely talented.